Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Crimson and in this video we are going to be starting our look through of the Elden Ring official art book. Now this is the first volume. Elden Ring's art book is split into 2 volumes. That's just how much art there is. I do have both volumes, but we are just going to start with volume 1. Now, I want to keep this intro brief, but there is just one thing I need to say regarding this book before we start. I was completely unable to get an English version of the book. It either just wasn't for sale on any website, or on eBay it cost like €500. So instead, I bought the Japanese version of the art book, which is fine. The only issue that may pop up is if there is any text in here, I won't be able to read it, unfortunately. I had a little skim through, and there isn't that much text or anything. This is more of like your traditional artwork book where it's just art. So stuff like names of characters and weapons will all be in Japanese. However, I am fairly confident in my knowledge of the game to be able to know what everything is simply by looking at it, because I put an unhealthy amount of hours into this game. Anyway, with that out of the way, let us just get started. So first off, we have this amazing sleeve that comes with it. So let's just take this off. And then we just have the standard Elden Ring Volume 1. And I should just quickly show you guys. This is a thick art book. Like, this is massive. And the second volume is about the same size. So this is going to be a long series. I'm going to be doing part 1 as its own series, and then part 2 as its own series as well, instead of doing one continuous thing, because I don't want to end up doing like Elden Ring art book, you know, part 8 or anything like that. So with that out of the way, let's just dive right in. So we start off with the same picture that we saw on the sleeve. And we have this great introduction picture to the lands between, with the Erd tree front and center. This is it right here. If any of you have read Berserk, and yes, we are only 3 minutes into a Crimson Artbook video before I bring up Berserk, but the Erd tree is extremely similar to the World tree in Berserk, and since Miyazaki is a massive Berserk fan and draws a lot of inspiration from it, it's almost confirmed that that is the inspiration for the design of the Erd tree. Not the lore, but just for the design of it. So next, this is our table of contents. However, I do not know what any of these chapters actually say. What I can say is we have gallery illustrations, and then concept art, and then characters, tarnished, and others. So that's what we're going to be looking at in volume 1. Basically landscapes, concept arts and stuff, and then the characters. So here is the first chapter, gallery illustrations. So we start off with this picture of Marika. As you can see, she has been strung up. This is how we find her in the final boss of the game. Now, I have already had a little look through this book prior to recording. So most of the book is landscapes and pictures of the lands between. And the last little bit, maybe about the last 30 pages or so, are dedicated to characters and armor sets. So we are actually going to do things in reverse for this episode, and we are going to start at the back with the characters and armor sets first. Just because one, I personally find that more interesting. And I think you guys will too, because some of the art of the characters and armor is incredible. So let us get right into it. So this is the start of chapter 3, and we can immediately see on the left page is a full body picture of the Wolf Knight armor set. This is the set that has been worn throughout the trailers. So this is Elden Ring's equivalent to the Elite Knight set from DS1 or the Faram set from DS2. Really good armor in my opinion. And also, just before we continue, I just want to reiterate that because this is the Japanese version, I can't read the captions for all of the armor. So I am pretty sure that I know all of the armor just by looking at it. However, if I do make a mistake, please do let me know so that I can correct it. Anyway, let's continue. So this is the Vagabond, one of the first starting classes that we get to choose from when we start the game. This is kind of our knight class or knight equivalent if you've played any other Souls games. He starts off with a broadsword and a shield. I believe he might also start with some kind of halberd as well, but I actually can't remember. But you can see that he has very heavy armor. In this, he has his helmet with the visor up and another sword at his side, as well as the massive greatsword over his shoulder. Then next to him, we have the warrior, another one of the starting characters that we get to choose from. And I really do like the look of the armor. I personally am not a big fan of the class, just because those kind of weapons aren't the ones that I usually like to start off Souls games with. But I like the kind of free-flowing robes, as well as kind of your standard leather armor. I think it goes really well, and the blue is just a perfect touch. So I'm assuming this section is just to do with the starting classes, because this is the hero class that we can start as. Very barbarian looking armor. This is actually the armor set worn by Neferiru in the game. And the class starts with an axe and a shield. The axe is this one right here, so it's quite good. If you want to start off with a pure strength, no shield or low defense kind of start to your playthrough. Really, really good selection if that's what you are into. Next, we have the bandit starting class over here. I believe the bandit starts the game with a dagger, a bow, a buckler, and a couple of arrows, but I might be wrong. I have actually never played Elden Ring or done a playthrough where I've selected the bandit class, but funny enough, whenever I play Dark Souls 1, I always choose Thief as the starting class. Really cool. I like the design. I really like the design of this armor set and this character. He looks very much like a bandit, you know, wearing more kind of traditional clothing rather than full-on armor, and just having a dagger and a bow rather than anything that would be forged in a castle proper. So on the left page we have the astrologer class. Let me just get the glare out of there for you. The astrologer is your starting class if you want to do a sorcery playthrough. I think the sorcerer starts off with some kind of staff, but I'm actually not sure because I've never done sorcery in Elden Ring. It's just not really a gameplay style that I personally find enjoying. And then over on the right-hand side, we have the Prophet, who is the starter class for a faith build. So, I believe that they start off with some kind of seal,
And I just want to quickly draw attention to a couple of little details about both of the armor sets. So the Prophet was obviously some kind of prisoner at some point based on the chain around his ankle. However, the piece around the neck is actually something that they do themselves, which is interesting. We find a lot of characters in Elden Ring, especially some of the lower born characters and enemies. For example, we find a couple in Stormvale that are all wearing this, and Corrin wears this as well. And also the astrologer has a piece of glintstone around their neck. I don't know if you guys can make that out. Let me zoom in. Right there, which I just think is a nice little touch since they use glintstone for their sorcery. Really cool. It's little touches like these, in my opinion, that really perfect armor sets in From Software games. Anyway, let's move on. So on the left, we have our Samurai class. Not too much to say on it. The armor does look incredible as far as samurai armor goes, although there are better samurai sets that you can unlock further into the game. This is a great class if you just want to start off with pure dexterity, since you start off with a katana. And yeah, that's really all I have to say for the samurai. Again, I'm not that big into dex, so I've only really done one playthrough starting as the samurai, but I really like it. And then over here we have possibly my favorite class design-wise, the prisoner. So you can see that the prisoner is just in rags, and is wearing the prisoner helmet with one of the eyes blocked out, so he can only see through one field. And this is the armor worn by Black Knight Bogard, who many of you may know as the guy who cooks shrimp and prawns for you throughout Leonia and the Altus Plateau. And so obviously at one point, Bogard was a prisoner, and he even says so as much that he shared a cell with the Dung Eater, which must have been horrific. Next, we have the Inquisitor. Next, we have the Confessor. Now, if I remember correctly, the Confessor is almost like a middle ground character between melee and sorcery. I might be wrong about that, but I really like that that option is there for people who can't decide whether they want to start off using magic or start off using melee. This is just a great character to kind of let new players try both. And then over here, we just have the Depraved. And then over here, we just have the Wretch. So this class starts off with nothing. I believe we start off with like a club of some kind. But no armor, no shield, no nothing. We just start off naked. Really cool. And this is the character of choice for basically anyone trying to like make their perfect build. What is really cool about the class system in Elden Ring and in all From Software games really is that just because you start as one character doesn't mean that you have to stick to that playstyle. So you could start off as the astrologer thinking that you're going to love sorcery, and then halfway through the game realize, oh no, wait, I actually want to be someone who has a two-handed greatsword, and you can change all that, and you can change all that, and you know, make the character you actually want rather than just being locked into one path right at the start of the game. So next, this is our first character that we have come across. So this is Melina. She is our finger maiden, despite not actually being a finger maiden. She is the one who finds us after we are defeated by the grafted scion, and she gifts us Torrent, our spectral steed. And throughout the game, whenever we rest at certain sites of grace, we get the chance to talk to her, and she will give us words of Malika verbatim, which is kind of interesting lore-wise. Like, you know, how does she know exactly what Malika said and how she said it? So this is how she appears to us in the start of the game, with her hood up in this cloak. And then during the talks at the Grace, she is still wearing this, but with the hood down. And then this attire, I believe this is what she is wearing if you summon her for the fight with Morgoth. And you can see that at the side of this picture here, she has one of her eyes closed with a mark on her eye that looks suspiciously like 3 fingers. But yeah, that's Melina. Next we have Torrent, so this is him here. He is our steed, our donkey horse hybrid, and he is what allows us to traverse the open world. Personally, I'm not a big fan of open world games at all. I do find Elden Ring to be exploring. It's probably the only open world game where I actually just enjoy kind of riding around, seeing what stuff I can find. Because normally whenever I play open world games, I just get overwhelmed super quickly. And then over here we have Calais. So Calais is one of the merchants that we can come across. He's the first one that we find in the church right at the very start of the game. He gives us a little bit of dialogue, and then later on he introduces us to another character named Blythe. And yeah, the merchants are prevalent throughout the entire game. There's one in every area, and they all sell different kinds of items, varying in usefulness. But what is cool is they all wear some variation of this kind of attire. It might be slightly different, or it might be a different color, and their voices are all different, but they all still have the same accent, which is a brilliant detail, because it just really sells the point home that, you know, these are all one people, they're just scattered. And it's a shame that Calais' quest got cut from the final game. I'm not going to go into it, but if you are interested in that, I would definitely look it up on YouTube. It is really cool. And then this is Calais' horse here. We find it next to him in the church. Actually, now that I look at it, I am realizing that it is a donkey, not a horse. I apologize. And then we have some of the different weapons down here. I believe these are the weapons that Calais can sell you, but I actually can't remember. It's been so long. So next we have Lunar Princess Rani. So there's a lot to say about her. So she is the daughter of Queen Renala of Caria and Radagon of the Golden Order. And she is one of 3 Empyreans in the game. The Empyreans are people chosen by the Two Fingers to potentially succeed Queen Marika. However, Rani completely disregards this and goes on her own path, to the point that she even discards her own flesh so that the greater will cannot possibly control her. And she ends up putting her putting her soul into the body of this doll that she had made. So this is how we find her in the game. We first meet her as Renna the Witch, right at the start of the game, where she gives us the Spirit Calling Bell, and she is pivotal to one of the major endings in Elden Ring. But yeah, she is a really cool character, and she has a great design with kind of one of her eyes being closed with this almost like spirit eye in its place, as well as having the 4 arms, and of course the thing she's most recognized for, the absolute massive hat. She could give Big Hat Logan a run for his money. But just quickly before we move on, I just wanted to show you guys this little Rani Nendoroid that I have, which is kind of ironic, as in Rani's quest, she turns herself into a little miniature doll that we carry around with her. So I just think it's funny that then they actually went and made a little miniature Rani. Anyway, I just thought I would show you guys that, and let's get back to it. Really cool character, and definitely one of my favorites. Next, we have on the left, we have just a body. I'm not sure if this is actually supposed to be anyone. I did briefly look this up to see if this is supposed to be anyone in particular, and I couldn't find anything, so I think this is just a random dead person that looks like they were burned alive, but I'm not quite sure. But on the right side, we have Blythe, the half-wolf. So we first meet Blythe in the Shaded Woods, thanks to Calais telling us how to kind of get his attention. Blythe serves Lady Rani. He was a gift to her by the Two Fingers and the Greater Will, both as a protector and also as an insurance policy in case she decides to go on her own path, which she does. But despite that, Blythe stays loyal the entire time and is probably the most loyal person to Rani out of all of the people in her service. As you can see, he is a half-wolf, so he has the body of a man, but the head of a wolf, and all that. I don't want to keep saying that, oh, this is a really cool character, because basically every character in Elden Ring is really good in my opinion. But yeah, Blythe is a fan favorite, and for a very, very good reason. Next, speaking of the Two Fingers, this is them here. So we can see that they look disgusting. There's one smaller picture down here, and then we have this double spread of them here. They are massive, grotesque. They're covered in like these weird hairs and what appear to be wounds as well. And the Two Fingers are the emissaries of the Greater Will. I know a lot of people kind of get that part confused. The Two Fingers themselves are not calling the shots in the Lands Between. They are the emissaries between the Greater Will and the inhabitants of the Lands Between. However, they can only communicate in gestures, so a finger reader is needed to actually translate it, which is kind of suspicious because, you know, we're getting like third-hand information because the Greater Will is telling the fingers through some method, and then the fingers are telling the finger reader through some method, and then the finger reader is telling us what they just said. So it's always hard to actually believe 100% that what the finger reader says is what the fingers said. And yeah, that is the Two Fingers. And then next we have the Three Fingers. So in the world of Elden Ring and in the Lands Between, the Three Fingers are forbidden because the Two Fingers serve the Greater Will, the Three Fingers serve chaos and frenzy. So the Three Fingers are locked way, way down below underneath the capital of Leyndell so that no one can try and access them. And we have to descend through the sewers and then descend through essentially a tomb where all of the merchants were shut in and sealed away. And at the very bottom of it all, you have to take off all of your armor, and then you are finally granted an audience with the Three Fingers. And one of the mechanics that Elden Ring has is that if you join specific factions, your character's eyes will change. And if you commune with the Three Fingers and get grabbed and get scorched, you then get these yellow eyes of frenzy, which do look really cool. You get these eyes briefly if you use any of the frenzy incantations, but if you pursue the 3 fingers, you get these permanently. However, it is possible to turn them off in settings, but that just kind of ruins it. To me, at least, anyway. Okay, so these are the finger reader crones. So this is just a standard finger reader here. And then this is finger reader Enya. So she is the one that we speak to at Round Table Hold. So the Round Table Hold has its own set of 2 fingers. And these fingers will only communicate with someone once they have kind of proven themselves by earning some great runes, and Enya is the one who interprets for them. So she is very crucial to the lore and actually understanding what's going on. She also serves as our boss, armor and weapon merchant. But yeah, that's pretty much it about Enya. The other finger readers in the game, like this woman here, just can be found all around the map, and if you show them your hands, they'll give you a little bit of cryptic information about some events later on in the game. But as you can see, these women are beyond ancient and decrepit, so since death is no more in the lands between, it's only a guess as to how long they have actually been alive. Okay, so next we have, this is Garank, the Beast Clergyman. So Garank is a character that we can find in Caelid, and his quest involves finding Deathroot and giving it to him so that he can eat it. He is trying to eat all of the Deathroot, or as much Deathroot as he possibly can, in order to both rid the world of it and also consume it. So this is him here. We don't really see what he actually looks like as Garank. We just see him in this massive brown robe. And we can acquire Deathroot by a couple of different ways. We can find it at the end of certain catacombs or caves, or by defeating a Tibia Mariner. And then over here we have a Misbegotten. So a Misbegotten is a type of enemy that we face in Elden Ring. They are a fairly early game enemy, but they do keep showing up in the game, and every time they get stronger and stronger. So they are kind of remnants or leftovers from the days before the Erdtree, back when the Crucible ruled the lands between. And as you can see, because they are from the Crucible, they are covered in all kinds of things that certain animals would have. So they have horns, they have tails, some of them have wings. You can see his tail. Let me zoom in a little bit. You can see his tail there, as well as these kind of very small budding wings on his back. But because of this, because the Crucible has been overthrown by the Erdtree, the Golden Order views them as subhuman or not even human at all, mostly using them as slave labor or kind of keeping them in caves so that they are out of sight and out of mind. And it's not like the Misbegotten did anything to deserve this. This is just how they were born. But because it goes against the Golden Order, they have to be eradicated, which is very sad. So next we have Gostock on the left page. Gostock is the guy that we meet at the entrance of Stormveil Castle, who tells us about the secret entrance around the side of the castle. And he is also the guy who loots our corpse every time we die in Stormveil. So I'm not the biggest fan of him. While he does help us out, he also, grave robs us and locks us in a room with a banished knight. But all jokes aside, I do actually really like his character design. As you can see, he's missing his left arm, implying that Godric took it for a part of grafting, which makes sense why he would then want someone to kill Godric. And I think From Software did an amazing job purposely trying to make you think he's lying to you, because it is possible to refuse his offer and have him open the front gate. And then when you open the front gate, you just get obliterated by arrows. So they did a really good job on that part. And then over on the right, we have a man-serpent, or Raya. I actually believe this is Raya. Zarias, since she is in her serpent form. And then we have Muriel down here. This is who performed the marriage rites between Marika and Radagon, I believe. I'm not 100% sure on that. It's been a while since I have played Elden Ring, but I'm pretty sure, yeah. Zarias, we first meet as Raya in Leonia, as this kind of blonde girl with a slight hunchback who seems very naive, but then it turns out that she not only works for Volcano Manor, but is Lady Tanith's adopted daughter, and then we also find out that she is a man-serpent. Very, very cool. So next we have a bunch of different sorcerers. So at the top of the left here, we have the sorcerer Azura, who was one of the creators of one primeval sorcery. And you can see that we find him here with crystals all around his body, and one looking like it has popped out of the top of his head and replaced his brain. Personally, he reminds me a lot of Master Wilhelm from Bloodborne, just based on his design. But yeah, and then this guy underneath him is primeval sorcerer Lusat, who is in a very similar position, with glintstone all over his body and covering his head, and again is another inventor of another primeval sorcery. Both of these men went mad, and both of them at one point were extremely influential figures in Raya Lucaria. However, since they kind of pursued the forbidden knowledge, they ended up becoming outcasts. And then over on the right side, we have Sorceress Selen. So Selen is the NPC that we meet in Limgrave, who teaches us sorcery. She was someone in Raya Lucaria, and we find out that she was an extremely gifted student, but she was thrown out of the academy for being a quote-unquote witch, but actually she was just trying to pursue things that the headmasters had deemed forbidden, which is a shame because she's a very knowledgeable person and an extremely good sorcerer. Her quest line is really, really interesting. I actually did not do it the first time around because I did not pursue any kind of sorcery. But then on my second playthrough, I went back and I did all the quest lines that I missed in my first one. And her quest is definitely interesting. One of the better ones in the game, in my opinion. Next, we have Gold Mask. So Gold Mask is a Golden Order fundamentalist. He has dedicated his life to studying the Golden Order, and has taken his study so far that it has taken a severe toll on his body. You know, he is emaciated. He barely, actually no, he never talks, but he does have this really cool mask, so I guess that's a bonus. One other cool thing about Gold Mask is he gives us something called the Mending Rune, which allows us to access another one of Elden Ring's endings. I think Elden Ring has 7 or 8 endings, but there's only really 3 ones that are like completely different. I'm not going to say which ones yet, but the mending rune allows us to achieve a certain ending if we decide to go down that path. Then over here we have Sir Gideon Ofnir, the All-Knowing, or the All-Healing Brute, as an Albinoric would say. So Gideon Ofnir is essentially the leader of the Round Table Hold, or the unofficial leader. He seems to have the most seniority once we arrive in the Round Table, to the point that he won't even talk to us or acknowledge us until we have gotten our first great rune. And then throughout the game, we can ask him a bunch of questions. He gives us some tidbits of information regarding certain demigods. And while he seems to be a nice guy who wants to work together, he is actually the complete opposite. He is a schemer, he is a liar, and he will do anything and kill anyone to become Elden Lord, which is very interesting because he is presented as your typical kind of wise old man, mentor type character. But then we find out through a bunch of different sources. We find out through Nefeli Lu, we find out through some dialogue with the Albinorics, we find out through some environmental storytelling of what he is really like. One other thing that I just think is a great little detail about Gideon is he is known as the All-Knowing, and the Albinorics mockingly refer to him as the All-Healing Brute. But his helmet is actually covered in decorative ears, not real ears, but like ears that are designed into the pattern of his helmet, just to kind of make you think that he's always listening or always aware of what you're doing. Really, really good character, and I love his design, especially his helmet, even if he's not the greatest of guys. So, on the right, since we just spoke about Gideon, this is someone who works for Gideon, and he is wearing the eye surcoat, so you can kind of see it. Let me zoom in a little bit. There, and then you can see the pattern on the knight's chest. So these guys are the eyes and ears of Gideon Ofnir, and they are spies throughout the lands between, and they follow you especially because Gideon is very interested. Since you are making a lot of progress in the world, he wants to know what's going on and try to use your success to his advantage, and he does this by having these lads keep an eye on you the entire time. There's a couple times throughout the game where we come across a dead body with one of these sets on it. The most notable one to me is in the arena where we fight Praetor Rykard. I believe it only spawns after we kill Rykard, but the assumption is that he followed us to Volcano Manor and then was killed by Rykard because he wasn't a good enough soldier or fighter. Anyway, onto the right page. So we have 2 different types of helmets. So the first one is the Nox Mirror Helm, and it is this kind of helmet that is comprised of all of these little small mirrors put together. Does not offer that much defense, but there is something that it defends that we will get to shortly. And then below this, we have a similar version of the Mirror Helm. This is worn by Iji the Giant, someone who is also in service to Lady Lani. Now, the reason people wear these types of helmets with mirrors is that it is believed that wearing these prevents the greater will from knowing your thoughts. So if you're planning on, I don't know, say, going against the greater will or slaying Two Fingers, for example, you would want to wear one of these at all times so that the greater will does not know what you are up to. Very interesting, and it's also funny to me that Elden Ring has its own version of a tinfoil hat. So next, on the left, we have 2 sets of just standard armor. This is the chain armor set, and I actually don't know what this one is called. It looks like it's made out of leather, but I actually do not know. I apologize for that. But this one is just a standard chain mail outfit that presumably a standard soldier would wear in service to any of the lords. But then over on the right side, we have the iron set, and you can see the difference. This one is a lot heavier. It has this little cape on it, kind of reminds me a bit of Bloodborne. But the most notable part, and probably the best looking part of it, is its chest piece, where it has this almost scale-like pattern to it. Let me zoom in so you guys can see. So it's not just one solid piece of iron, it is a bunch of pieces kind of in this scale pattern put together, and in the game it offers quite a high defense. So next we have the scaled armor set. So this one looks very similar to the iron set. However, where the iron set only had the kind of scaled looking chest plate, this armor has scaled patterned everything. It has the scales on the greaves, on the gauntlets, on the shoulder pauldrons, even on the helmet, and is so cool. It also has this nice cape at the back. Definitely one of the best armor sets, especially early on in the game. And yeah, over here on the right page, we have the Drake Knight armor set. So the Drake Knights are knights who have partaken in Dragon Communion. So they worship the dragons as well as the Erdtree. The Golden Order kind of tolerates Dragon Communion just because they know that the Golden Order tolerates the Dragon Communion and the worship of dragons only really because they have to, and because a war happened where a dragon breached Leyndell, and they came to an arrangement due to Godwyn the Golden and the dragon Fortisax actually becoming allies and then friends after the two of them fought each other, which is really cool. That's why if you play Elden Ring, all of the knights in Leyndell wield lightning, is because there is a dragon cult within the capital, since there is also a massive dragon corpse in the capital as well. So next on the left we have D, the Hunter of the Dead. So D is someone who is another Golden Order fundamentalist, but not just a fundamentalist. D is a zealot, and his purpose in life is to slay all of those who live in death, basically like undead or skeletons or anything like that. Things that are dead but still alive and animate. He has a twin brother whose name also starts with D, and he has this armor that kind of reflects it. He has said in the game that they are essentially one person in two bodies. His armor is forged in such a way as to make it look like it's two people, but it's actually just one, and it's worked extremely intricately. I wish there was a picture showing it from the front because it looks so cool when you look at it from the front. And he also has this great sword down here. And he is one of the first NPCs that we actually meet in Elden Ring, and is crucial to achieving one of the endings. And then over here we have Roger. So Roger is an old companion and friend of D's, and he is what is known as a spellblade, that he is a warrior sorcerer. His goal in the game when we first meet him is he is trying to uncover the mystery and the truth behind the Knight of the Black Knives. the night of the Black Knives being the night where Godwin the Golden was slain after a fragment of the Rune of Death was stolen from Malakath. And we first meet him in Stormvale Castle, as he is convinced that there is something underneath Stormvale that will lead him in the right direction. And unfortunately for him, he finds it. He finds the corpse, or part of the corpse, of Godwin the Golden. And in doing so, he is afflicted by deathblight, by being stabbed by a barb of it. And because of this, after that, he is paralyzed from the waist down. And as we continue throughout the game, he slowly and surely deteriorates more and eventually dies, which is quite sad. However, there is a possibility if you do Fia's questline, and Dee's questline too, that you can actually help him complete his objective and tell him the truth about the Night of the Black Knives, if you want to, but you don't have to. Really cool character. I only wish that we got to see more of him, like, active. I don't know, maybe, like, fight alongside him just a little bit more, but that's just a personal complaint. That's nothing to do with the actual game or the character. So next we have the Prophet armor set on the right hand side here, and there's a lot to say about this. So this is the armor worn, or sorry, not the armor, the robes worn by Corin. Corin is an NPC that we first meet at Round Table Hold, and he is the one who first teaches us incantations or holy magic. His quest is that he is essentially feeling pointless, like he's going through life without a purpose, and he decides that he's going to find purpose by going out on his own and trying to seek Gold Mask, which he does, and then serving as his aide or scribe, or basically whatever Gold Mask needs him to do. However, he then loses his faith after Gold Mask makes some interesting revelations about the Golden Order, which Corin struggles to believe because they kind of go against everything that he believes in and is taught. And we, the player, have the option of either letting Corin, know and learn the hard truth that most of what he knew was a lie, or to give him something called a tonic of forgetfulness, so that he will forget and go back to being kind of this happier, more optimistic guy, because once he is hit with the revelations from Gold Mask, his demeanor changes drastically and he is a lot more melancholic. This robe is also seen a lot throughout the game. It's the same armor as the Prophet the Prophet starting class, with the yellow robe and the piece around the neck. Really cool. Sometimes the piece on the neck is changed out with a wheel, but it just depends. And then over here we have Encha. Not to be confused with Enya, who is the finger reader in Round Table Hold. Encha is someone who works for Gideon Ofnir and is essentially his right-hand man. He is willing to carry out most of the atrocities needed that Gideon orders, such as the attack on the Albinoric village. And after we retrieve a half of a medallion, the next time we come to the Round Table Hold, we find that it's slightly different. No one's there, but Encha's there, and he instantly attacks us, and we have to kill him. And then if we go and confront Gideon about that, he feigns ignorance and basically just says, oh, Encha was acting on his own, and good riddance, he's dead. But it's painfully obvious that Gideon gave the order. I wish there was a little more character development with Encha, because they don't actually say a single line of dialogue. But his character is more about Gideon Ofnir's character rather than his own, and his armor is incredible and also terrifying. It's this armor that has this skull with pieces of hair still attached to it, and then the rest of his armor is like burnt bone and burnt flesh. Really, really grisly looking armor, but it is incredibly cool. It reminds me a lot of the Dark Wraiths from Dark Souls, if you've played those games, but if you're watching an Elden Ring artbook video, I'm assuming you've played Dark Souls. Next, we have the Dung Eater. So the Dung Eater is another NPC that we can interact with. So there is a lot to say about the Dung Eater, unfortunately. So the Dung Eater is an absolute madman. He goes around the lands between killing people, but not just killing them, he tortures them to death and then defiles their corpses so that they can never return to grace. And if they are reborn, they will still be cursed and lose all connection to the Erd Tree. So people fear him as much as they hate him. We first meet a kind of spiritual form or an astral projection form of him in the Round Table Hold, and he asks us to free his corporeal flesh in the sewer jail which he's in. And if you decide to do so, he breaks out, and as soon as you break him out, he tells you straight to your face, hey, the second I get out of here, I'm gonna kill again. And he does just that. He kills Bogart, the black god, who is the guy who gives us shrimp and crab, which is very sad, and then tries to attack us, and we have to defeat him. Really cool, very interesting quest line, but you have to find a certain number of items, and the quest line concludes with him realizing that he needs to be the one on the receiving end of the torture in order to be blessed. So you actually end up using these items that you find to torture and defile him, and eventually he dies. He is another NPC who also gives us something that we can use for one of the endings in Elden Ring. So if you would like a dung ending of your game, this is your man. So next, over on the right page, we have Roderica. So Roderica is another NPC that we can meet. We actually meet her fairly early on in the game in Limgrave, right outside, not right outside, but on the path to our fight with Margit. And we find out through talking to her that she is nobility from a land across the sea, and her companions came to the lands between, but Godric has taken all of her companions, and then we find out later that he used them in his grafting, and as such she feels useless. She feels that, all of her friends died for her, and her being not very useful or good at anything, in her opinion. However, later on, as you progress the story, she finds her calling as a spirit tuner and stays in Round Table Hold and finally gains some self-confidence. So she is the NPC that you go to upgrade spirit ashes. Personally, I never really interacted with her that much on my first playthrough because I just tend not to use spirit ashes. I didn't even know that she stayed in Round Table Hold until my second playthrough. But yeah, it's really cool, and it's nice to see her go from this kind of frightened girl who thinks she's a burden on everyone to finding a purpose for herself. Let me just zoom out so you can actually see the bottom, and there's some more pictures of her here. She has this kind of red hood, which is a symbol of nobility where she comes from. Next, we have Fear, the Deathbed Companion. So, Fear is another NPC that we first meet in Round Table Hold, and I am sure you have seen the memes of the woman in Elden Ring on the bed who will give you a hug. That is Fear. So her purpose was to come to the Lands Between to lie with the Prince of Death, which is Godwin. So she wants to be with Godwin's corpse in order to have a child and essentially resurrect him, because that is what bedside companions kind of do where she comes from. But she decided that instead of being the bedside companion for someone that was chosen for her, that she would come and choose who she wants to be the companion for, which is really nice and quite empowering. And speaking of the hug meme, you are able to give her a hug, which is actually essential for her quest. But the hug gives you an item which depletes 5% of your health unless you get rid of it. Which, when the game first came out, no one knew that, and it was so funny watching people finally figure it out, myself included. But Fia is yet another individual who we can get an item that can give us one of the endings. Her quest and Dee's quest are kind of intertwined, because Dee is the hunter of those who live in death, and Fia is the champion of those who live in death. So very interesting. So we see two different iterations of her here, one wearing this black robe, and then this one in more of like a kind of nightgown dress kind of attire. Really cool. So on the left here, we have Lionel the Leonhearted. So he is a knight that we can come across in the Lands Between. Most notable is he partakes in the Redan festival with us, and he is also Fia's adopted father, which is actually really just nice that this man kind of found Fia and just decided to raise her as his own. There isn't really much to say about him. I may just not know the lore about him, but I'm pretty sure that it's just that he is Fia's adopted father and fights alongside us a couple of times, both in the Redan festival and as a summon. And his armor is very interesting. I know the warrior jar Alexander is Elden Ring's version of the Onion Knight. However, Lionel looks a bit more like the Onion Knight, especially with his armor, and yeah, plus his hat is quite cool. And then over to the right we have Akina. So Akina is someone from the Land of Reeds, and by the way, the Land of Reeds is basically this world's version of Japan. So he has this kind of samurai-looking armor, as well as fighting with, I believe it's a wakizashi, as well as a katana. But there is quite a bit to say about him. So first off, we fight alongside him in the Redan festival, but he essentially gave up on all of his life goals and his life and just focused on becoming a better swordsman because he just thirsted for blood. So much so that he ended up serving Moog, the Lord of Blood, because he was so good at spilling blood and just absolutely reveled in killing and bloodshed. So he fit right in the Margwyn dynasty. Really cool character. I really like his armor, and his weapons are some of the best in the game, or at least they were. They do a lot of bleed damage, as you might assume, but yeah. Next we have Yura. So Yura is someone that we meet fairly early on in the game. Actually, right at the beginning, we can find him in the Lake of Aikeel, and he warns against fighting dragons, so it's kind of inferred that he has experience fighting dragons. His main character trait, though, is that he fights against recusants and bloody fingers, because he used to fight alongside a woman named Eleanor, and she became a bloody finger, or actually it might have been a recusant, I can't remember, I apologize, but regardless, he ended up losing her to them, and he then set out on a quest for revenge. So he is a hunter of recusants, bloody fingers, anyone who would invade anyone else. So he is basically a man driven by hate, but he's actually quite calm, like if you talk to him in the game. He has this really cool headpiece, which is like this giant metal hat which stretches down almost to his neck, which just makes the character look so cool. And he also wields a katana. So next on the right page we have Bernal. So Bernal is an NPC that we meet in an area called the War Master's Shack. And he asks us a bunch of questions, basically saying like, what do you think of the Golden Order and all those kinds of things. And after we're done answering him, he acts as a vendor for Ashes of War. But then later on in the story, we meet him at Volcano Manor, since he has become a recusant. A recusant is a tarnished who kills other tarnished. The recusants essentially go on contracts to kill their own, so they are despised by most other tarnished. And Bernal does these missions and kills tarnished, but seems very melancholic about it. Like, it's not something that he actively enjoys doing. And then after that, we encounter him for the last time in Crumbling Farm, Amazula, but this time as an invader, and that is where he meets his end. Both his armor and his weapon are incredible. Let me just zoom in so you can see the armor that he has on. It is so heavy and so decorative, it is insane. And his weapon is like this giant mace that has a serpent biting the end of it, which is so cool. I'm not doing the weapon justice by describing it. I'm hoping that in volume 2, when we get to the weapon section, that we get to see it. But yeah, that's Bernal and Eura. Next, we have White Mask Vare. So Vare is the very first NPC that we meet in Elden Ring. He is the guy who tells us that we are made in this, and kind of comes off as very passive-aggressive the first time we meet him. But then later in the game we come across him, and similar to Bernal, he asks us about what we think of the Golden Order and around. And if you tell him that you're not sure about the Golden Order and that you think the Round Table Hold is filled with fools, he will say, that's good, and that's how you begin his quest. And he leads you down a path to join a blood cult tied to Moog. So to do this, you need to invade 3 people. So he is essentially like the invader NPC. And then after that, he gives us some kind of initiation by doing something to our finger. And after we've completed the invasions, he initiates us into the blood cult by giving us some of his corrupted blood into our finger. The reason he's called White Mask Vare and wears all white is he is a field surgeon. So during the war and the Shattering, he was someone who would go out on the battlefield and kill the wounded soldiers, as well as performing things like, amputations and stuff in the field hospitals. And that is where a lot of Moog's recruits came from, because these people have spilled so much blood and were used to being around massive quantities of bloodshed. What's interesting about Vare is out of all of the field doctors that Moog recruited, Moog tried to give them his accursed blood, and all of them ended up dying except for Vare. Vare is the only one who survived, so he is pretty high up in the Mogwin dynasty. Really cool character. he is one of my favorite NPCs, and his design is also just really cool. I think the white mask, just giving him this blank, soulless look, makes perfect sense.
So over here on the right, we have Mad Tongue Albrecht. Now, Albrecht is probably most known for being the red phantom that invades you if you jump off the banister into that massive hallway in Round Table Hold. And if you do this fairly early on in the game, you get absolutely destroyed. But once you're a little bit stronger, it actually ends up being not an easy fight, but definitely a fun fight. But he is known as being mad due to jeering tongues. So I'm assuming what that means is that people were harassing him or bullying him or something. However, something that is really interesting is that once you kill him during the invasion, he drops a tongue. So that just indicates that whoever was making fun of Albrecht took their tongue out. So this guy is very serious. His armor is quite cool. He has this very old-fashioned looking hat, almost looks like something out of Bloodborne, as well as this massive black cape. And if I remember correctly, he wields a lot of different sorceries, but I actually can't remember. I've only ever fought this guy once. And next up on the left page, we have Juno Hoslow.
So Juno Hoslow is the older brother of Dialos Hoslow, who we meet in Round Table Hold, and we meet him multiple times throughout our journey in the Lands Between. And while Dialos is not an accomplished warrior at all, he is awful at fighting. His brother, however, is an extremely skilled warrior, to the point that Dialos is always trying to impress him and act like him in situations despite not even coming close to his skill level. We have the option of invading and killing Juno if you do the Recusant quest line. I personally never do. I did it on like my third playthrough just to get the armor set. During your playthrough of Elden Ring, Dialos will often say the tale of House Hoslow is written in blood, which appears to be like their family motto. And while Dialos does not live up to it, Juno certainly does. He has a whip that causes extreme bleed buildup when you fight him. And he has the same armor as Dialos, this very ornate looking armor, but he has the helmet, which Dialos does not. It almost looks like a ram's skull with its two horns. And he is the final contract that you fight in the Recusant quest line. And you find him in the mountaintop of the giants. So he is a very endgame type enemy and is extremely strong because of it. So Celavis is another member of Lady Rani's inner circle, and while E.G. and Blythe seem kind of well-mannered and polite and everything, Celavis is not. He is a vile, vile man. From, speaking down to us all the time, speaking badly of E.G. and Blythe. He gives us a quote-unquote mystery tonic to give to Nefeli Liu, and if you do, it kills her because it's, poison. But also he has a secret little basement in Rani's Rise, and this basement is full of dead bodies which he uses as puppets. And there is another secret room within the secret basement which has a bed and a life-size doll of Sorceress Selen, because the two of them went to Rani Lucaria together. So I'll let you put the pieces of that one together. And that's actually how Selen's quest ends. We have to put her primal glintstone into that doll. But the fact that he had that like hidden away behind 3 different hidden doors is crazy. So here is someone wearing the Raptor set. So this is it from the front, this is it from the back. The Raptor set is worn by a group called the Ravenmount Assassins, and they wear these massive cloaks of raven feathers. And I think it's one of the coolest looking cloaks in the entire game. They have these weapons that are all very sneaky and look like weapons that an assassin would use, like these gauntlets that have kind of daggers on the end of the fingers, as well as some hooks down here. Let me zoom in so you guys can see. Some hooks and, you know, a curved sword and a bunch of other stuff. They are a very secretive organization, the Ravenmount Assassins, but I think the armor is just so cool. Maybe that's just the inner edgelord in me, but yeah, let's continue. So next we have Jaren. So Jaren is known as the Wandering Tumbleweed. We first meet him at the Redan Festival as he is the one hosting it. And the reason he is hosting it is because he visited the Carrier Manor. He visited the Carrion Manor and met a young Redan, and the two of them became best mates. And the two of them swore an oath to each other to essentially be battlefield comrades. So after in Caelid, where Redan was left with the Scarlet Rot and lost his mind, Jaren set up this festival to try and assemble the best warriors to go and kill Redan, not out of hate or wanting his great rune, but because, one, he knew that his friend would want an honorable death in battle, and 2, because he wanted to put his friend out of mercy. So it's actually really nice. And his armor is called the Eccentric set because it looks like it's modeled together. You can't really make it out here, but in the game it is very colorful. And while that storyline is all, you know, very kind and happy and all that, there's another part of Jaren's storyline which is not. He is trying to kill Sorceress Selene. He ends up finding her in the Weeping Peninsula when she has been captured, imprisoned, and chained to a wall. However, if we do Selene's questline, we take out her primal glintstone, which is essentially her soul. So by the time Jaren arrives, she's already dead, but he even says that he knows that she just used some magic to escape. And after we do the whole thing where we put Selene's primal glintstone into Celivis's special time doll, the two of them end up having a fight to the death at Raya Lucaria, which kind of makes sense, you know. Jaren is Jaren being a friend to the Carrion royal family. The Carrions are the founders of Raya Lucaria. Raya Lucaria kicked Selene out for being a witch, so it makes sense why the two of them would have animosity towards each other. But you have a choice of whether to help Jaren in his quest or Selene in hers. I always help Selene just because I think she's cool. And over here on the right side of the page is the Guilty set. There's not much to say about this. It's just a set that we find, and a lot of lower level enemies use it. It's used as like a form of punishment for criminals or anything like that. I don't have much to say on it just because there isn't really much to say on it, but you can see that there's like kind of not a crown of thorns, but more like a necklace of thorns around the person's neck. And some of the people that you find crucified in Limgrave have this on, or at least have this around their neck. So, I mean, it makes sense. Like, it's a decent way to torture someone to torture someone in a world where people can't actually die. So next we have the Depraved Perfumer armor. So the perfumers have a big backstory. So they were originally basically just normal perfumers. They made perfume and sold it to rich people. But then the shattering occurred and they got conscripted into the military. And instead of creating potions and concoctions to make nice aromas, they were essentially turned into chemists to make drugs for the soldiers, to make them bolder, to make them not feel fear, and this corrupted a great many of them. And many of them afterwards still go out and pursue those ends. Some of the perfumers, though, specialize in hunting down omens, because I believe there's a part of the omen, or there is a part of an omen which is necessary for a special type of perfume. So the omens are absolutely terrified of these guys, and so are the living jars, because the shard of a living jar is like a treasure to any perfumer who happens to find one. So over on the right, we have the Errant Sorcerer. Let me just zoom in on this. So this is the Errant Sorcerer set. So this is a sorcerer who has been sent out by Rhea Lucaria, or has gone on a mission for Rhea Lucaria. So they set off into the world. They are a lot more combat oriented in terms of their spells than your standard scholar at the university, but not as strong as one of the other types of mages that we will speak about. Next, we have Lady Tanith. So Lady Tanith is the Lady of Volcano Manor and wife of Praetor Rykard. So she is the head of the Recusant faction, and she is the one that gives out the contracts to all of the different recusants, including us if we choose to go down that path. What is actually very wholesome and sweet is that Tanith was a commoner. She was originally a dancer, but Rykard fell in love with her and married her and essentially made her a lady, which is very, very sweet. And once Rykard, became devoured by the serpent and became a monstrosity, he gave her a tonic of forgetfulness, because he did not want her to remember him like this massive monster. He wanted her to remember him as, the man that he was, which is just really nice and also kind of heartbreaking. So next up, we have two very interesting characters. So these are two members of House Marai, and House Marai are the lords of the Shaded Castle at the bottom of the volcano the mountain where Volcano Manor is. This guy up here is Maris Marai. So he is the son, and it's said in the game that all of the sons of House Marai are born very sickly, which kind of makes sense because their castle is surrounded and covered in poison, and it also sits exactly where everything drains from the mountain down to. So yeah, no wonder everyone's sick when you live in a literal poison swamp. It's like Miyazaki's dream home. And here we have another member of House Marai. This guy appears to be a little bit older. They wear these kind of head dress looking things. Let me zoom in so you guys can see. As well as these face masks. Now, I'm assuming that this is to possibly cover up any deformities, either caused by the illness or by birth. I'm not sure. But yeah, they're just this interesting small family that we come across as we traverse the lands between. Okay, so next up on the left we have the Battle Mage. set won by the Battle Mages. So the Battle Mages are sorcerers from Raya Lucaria who set out to try and solve different conflicts in the lands, combining their martial prowess with their magical ability. And they do this by wielding magical weapons such as glintstone great hammers and like great swords and stuff. They also, while they do wear robes similar to their colleagues, they also wear full armor, so they are quite difficult to take down. You often find them like just walking around different places in Elden Ring, like you see a few in the Urnia and the Altus Plateau and stuff like that. And then over on the right side is one of my favorite armor sets in the game. This is the Carrion Knight set. So Carrier is an extremely powerful house, or used to be an extremely powerful house. Now they are subjects of America and the Golden Order, but they still have a lot of power. They are a matriarchal monarchy, so it is the women take precedence over the men when it comes to succession, and they are all extremely skilled sorcerers. Raya Lucaria, I believe, was actually founded by the Carians, and the Grand Headmaster of Raya Lucaria and also the Queen of Caria is Renala, and she is the final boss of Raya Lucaria. We find her in a pretty sorry state, but we end up fighting a illusion that is a version of her at her prime, and she is extremely powerful. She had married Radagon, and their children were Rani, Rykard, and Radan, so that's where Rani gets her skill from. The Carians get their powers from the moon, which is very interesting, and each Carrion member kind of has their own style and their own moon. Like Rani has her dark moon, Renala has her full moon, and yeah, the Carians are an extremely ancient house, and they have pacts with dragons, they have pacts with trolls. They even taught trolls how to do some sorceries. However, after the shattering, Raya Lucaria took Renala hostage and essentially declared war on Caria, and they formed an army made up of people called the Knights of the Cuckoo, who tried to march on Caria and did not have a very good time because they got absolutely slaughtered by the Carians. And a lot of this was due to the Carians' magical ability alone. So this is the armor set that would be worn by the Carrion Knights. It has extremely high magic resistance, as well as pretty good physical resistance too, but I just think it's one of the coolest looking armor sets in the entire game. And you actually get it pretty early too. Let's move on. So next we have the Wolf set. We find this after doing another Recusant invasion. We've already kind of talked about the Wolf set at the beginning, so I won't mention too much. It's this game's like cinematic armor, so you know, Dark Souls 1 had the Elite Knight set, Dark Souls 2 had the Faram set, Elden Ring has the Wolf Knight set. And then finally over here we have the Fingerprint armor set. So this is the armor set of Vyke. Vyke is the guy on the cover of Elden Ring. He was the Tarnished who came closest to becoming Elden Lord before us, but he fell and eventually succumbed after having an audience with the Three Fingers and falling to the madness and the frenzy. So he almost made it, but he didn't. And the reason it's called the Fingerprint armor set is, you might not be able to see it, but this is the armor that he was gripped in by the Three Fingers. So half of his armor is actually like burnt with these fingerprint marks on it. Like if you see the helmet there, and then that whole side of his body is just completely burned and twisted compared to the rest of his armor. Which is especially very sad because it's implied that he chose to go with the Flame of Frenzy in order to save the life of his finger maiden, because he did not want to use her as kindling.
And that, everyone, is going to be it for part 1 of the Elden Ring Volume 1 Artbook. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed making this. Part 2 will be coming out next week, where we will be going into the environments of Elden Ring. But yeah, so again, thank you so much for watching. Your viewership means the world to me. My name has been Crimson, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Have a good evening.